Hi everybody, Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your week. I want to talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. We are seeing further escalation over the course of the last week. The United States and the United Kingdom and France have all given permission after months of foot dragging for the Ukrainians to use their missiles, these missiles provided by the NATO allies, to target military targets inside the Russian Federation. Putin has been warning them not to do that. They decided they were going to. The Russian response has been to formally change their nuclear doctrine so that they could they would be considered to be in a state of war legally against any country that allowed Ukraine to use their missiles against Russia. So in other words, essentially, Russia is claiming that they're now at war with France, with the UK, with the United States. And also the Russians used a medium-range missile, hypersonic, nuclear-capable, directly against a Ukrainian target in Dnipro. In other words, what we're seeing from Putin is, I'm showing you what you're doing is moving towards World War III, and that's how I'm responding. Does that mean that Putin is actually escalating towards direct war with NATO allies? The answer to that is no. He wasn't doing that when he was losing the battle in Ukraine in the early months. He's certainly not doing it now that he's winning, and he is winning. He has more troops on the front lines, including those from North Korea, those from Yemen, those that he's getting from other countries. Also, he's taking more territory on the ground in Ukraine at a faster pace now, more significant amounts of territory in southeast Ukraine than at any point since the opening months of the war. Plus, Trump is president-elect. Trump has said, I want to end this war. And he is coming in just in a couple of months. So what Putin is doing is not threatening World War III. He's instead showing off just how bad this Biden policy is, this existing NATO policy is. He's making it easier for Trump to pivot away and say, I'm the peacemaker. We were heading towards World War III, this horrible escalation. I'm the guy that got the great deal done. And look how brilliant I am. Putin is facilitating that. Now, of course, to make that happen, Trump still has to give Putin something that he wants. He has to give an outcome that is acceptable to Putin. And Putin's made clear, at least thus far, that he's not going to give up any territory that he has, that he's not prepared to accept that Ukraine would be able to join NATO. He's also said that Ukraine can't continue to have a functional armed forces, which is something that would be completely unacceptable to Ukraine. So the devil's going to be in the details here. There clearly is an opportunity for Trump to end the war. He's promised he's going to end the war, and I think he can. I think he can create a ceasefire. The Ukrainian leadership has already made clear that they are supportive of ending the war, but they're not just going to listen. There has to be a back and forth conversation with the Americans. So seeing what it is that Trump is prepared to put forward and whether or not the Russians are capable of accepting it, are willing to accept it, even though it will look like a win for Russia compared to where they would have been under Biden, under Harris, or at any other point in the last couple of years. Still, if you're Putin, there is an open question. You're taking land right now. The Ukrainians don't have the people to continue to put up a strong defense. Why wouldn't you delay this out for another 6 months? Take more land. Try to get all the territory that you have formally annexed over the course of the war. Why not settle the war on your terms? A lot easier to do if you're winning than losing. And the question there will be to what extent Trump is willing to cause material punishment to Putin if he doesn't say yes. And that's an open question. Trump historically has been willing to take easy wins that don't necessarily play well over the long term. Look at Afghanistan. He wanted to get the Americans out. He cut a deal with the Taliban. It was a deal that was clearly very advantageous from a military and from a governance perspective for the Taliban than it was for the United States. He cut that despite the fact that the allies were not supportive or coordinating. That undermined the U.S. deeply. Biden then continued with that plan, and it was one of the biggest losses that the U.S. has experienced over the last 4 years. Now, that, of course, was a loss that ultimately fell on Biden. This would be a loss that would ultimately fall on Trump. And so does he want to risk that? That's a very interesting question. And of course, you also have to look at Trump's staff, because he can make a phone call with Zelensky and with Putin, but ultimately it is the Secretary of State, the National Security Advisor, and others that are going to have to work out the details of that agreement. And those people, at least thus far, are not people that are oriented towards giving away the store to Putin. They're people oriented towards mistrust of Putin, towards a hard line against the Russians, towards support of Ukraine. So I am thinking here that, number one, there's a reasonably high chance that Trump can get the win that he wants. But number two, this isn't likely to be a walk in the park for the Russian president. The Europeans need to play here as well. And what will be important, there's been a few formulaic conversations thus far between President-elect Trump and some of the European leaders. They haven't gone very far, but they've also not blown up the bilateral relationships. Their ability to work with Trump advisors on Trump and on a greater coordination of what an ultimate solution or settlement of the Russia-Ukraine war will make a dramatic difference as to what extent this is sustainable, to what extent this leads to not only a Ukraine that can continue to defend itself and the territory that it is left with, but also can integrate into Europe, can be politically successful as a democracy over time, and that NATO will stay strong and stay together and stay aligned with the United States, because they don't have another choice. There is no autonomous European military capacity. It's either NATO sticks together or it fragments. Those are all things that we're going to watch very carefully over the course of the next couple months. But for now, an escalatory period, and it's all performative, and it's all oriented towards what happens when Trump becomes president. That's it for me, and I'll talk to y'all real soon.